In June 2023, the streaming service Max released the documentary Rock Hudson, All That Heaven Allowed. Through interviews with friends, industry peers, modern admirers, and Rock himself, the documentary traces the life and career of a man who, in the words of actor Alania Douglas, was the quote, personification of Americana, end quote, during the 1950s. Of course, the doc is also preoccupied with Rock's secret life as a gay man, which came to light once he was diagnosed and soon died of AIDS in 1985 at the height of the AIDS epidemic. His death changed the conversation around AIDS, resulting in more public support to act on getting the disease under control, because now, as it's commonly been said, everyone knew someone who had had AIDS. Now, before I say more, I want to make it clear that I did really like this documentary. I'm a big Rock Hudson fan, so the fact that he and his story are getting such a mainstream push in 2023 makes me very happy. And of course, Hudson's life as a closeted gay man and his place in queer history is worth exploring, especially if you're not otherwise familiar with him. But as I watched, I found myself wanting just a bit more. For the filmmakers to spend just a bit more time on All That Heaven Allows or Pillow Talk and really explore the choices Hudson was making. Instead, the clips of these performances are almost exclusively used to contextualize Hudson's secret life. The clips range from other characters talking about his character wearing masks or of Rock in character, literally coming out of a closet. I'll admit some of them are cleverly used, but at a certain point, the irony of it all felt heavy handed. This got me thinking, is this all there is to Rock Hudson? As someone who's watched many of Rock's movies, has studied those movies and his career for years, I know that's not true. So why does it feel like too often Rock Hudson seems reduced to ironic subtext and his tragic end? Just like I do with other videos in my Underrated Gems series, I'll focus on the performances of Rock Hudson as opposed to looking at his entire life and career. Like I mentioned at the start of this intro, there's a whole documentary that just released on Rock. So if you want all that, I recommend you watch it. In this video, I'll look at two of Rock's films in particular: the 1959 romantic comedy Pillow Talk, and Seconds, a 1966 sci-fi thriller. I'm singling out these two performances for a few reasons. Not only are they two of my favorites, but they perfectly demonstrate Rock's versatility as an actor and his willingness to take risks. By 1959, Rock Hudson was on the other side of his matinee idol peak. His excellent run in Douglas Sirk melodramas and sole Oscar nomination for the Western epic Giant had come to pass, and Rock was on the hunt for new ways to flex his acting muscles. Pillow Talk, and his subsequent collaborations with Doris Day, Lover Come Back in 1961 and Send Me No Flowers in 1964, ushered in a new phase of Hudson's career, the rom-com lead. This new phase initially conflicted Hudson. According to Mark Griffin's biography on Hudson, All That Heaven Allows, Hudson, quote, knew it was high time to loosen his image, end quote. He worried he wouldn't have the comedic chops to pull off the role of Brad Allen, a womanizing songwriter who shares a party line, aka phone line connection, with Day's Jan Morrow. It would be an undertaking for even a seasoned comic actor. Luckily, he and Day immediately hit it off. Both homely Midwesterners at heart, the pair developed humorous nicknames for one another. Rock would call Doris Maud, while she referred to him as Ernie. In several interviews given after their string of on-screen pairings, both Doris and Rock speak about the other with genuine platonic love, often mentioning how when they were together, they laughed and laughed. Their easy and natural chemistry is present in every interaction the two have in Pillow Talk. Even when their characters are at odds over Brad's playboy antics, you can tell they're having the best time, exchanging the script's clever barbs. There's one scene where Brad, switching between his true self and his alter ego, the sensitive Texas mama's boy Rex Stetson, you can tell that the smiles that peel across his face belong not just to Brad, but to Rock. And speaking of Brad's alter ego, let's talk about it. As I mentioned earlier, Brad and Jan share a party line, and their entanglements over the phone are the only interactions they've ever had with each other. One night, when Brad realizes he's crossed paths with Jan at a restaurant, with an amazing purple wall situation, I might add, and likes what he sees, he comes up with the ruse to create Rex Stetson, knowing that Jan would never go for him if she realizes who he truly is. As the two get to know each other, Brad decides to have a little fun with Jan, and as Rex, begins to say things like how much he likes cooking and enjoys talking with his mother, which, because it's 1959, Rex having these qualities can mean only one thing. A lot is made of Hudson's meta performance in this film, and when you watch it for the first time with that context, it's admittedly extraordinary to take in. As Griffin writes in his Hudson biography, quote, with Rock Hudson in the lead, a predominantly gay man is playing a straight man who is impersonating a gay man, end quote. It's a layered element to the performance that, once seen, can't really be unseen. And while there have been book chapters and scholarly papers written on the implications of Hudson's Brad changing his voice to this exaggerated Texas drawl, on this rewatch especially, there were moments when Rock spoke in his quote-unquote normal voice that struck me, because this also wasn't his normal voice at all. Not really. It's gravelly and affected to such a degree when he's trying to be seductive with his female pursuits that, at least to my ear, it feels artificial. It makes me wonder how Rock sounded when the cameras weren't rolling, the lilts he may have allowed his voice to fall into when he was surrounded by an accepting circle of friends. Above all, what I'm most struck by with repeat viewings of Pillow Talk is the gentleness and ease with which Rock carries himself. Even if Brad/Rex is a meta performance he's aware of and maybe uncomfortable performing, he never lets it show. As his co-star Tony Randall observed, quote, Rock came alive in comedy. He began to have fun, and the results were magical. Perhaps not as fun, but just as fascinating to watch, is Rock's performance in the film Seconds. Directed by John Frankenheimer, who could honestly be the subject of his own Underrated Gems video. Seconds is the story of Arthur Hamilton, played at the start of the film by John Randolph. Arthur is feeling unfulfilled despite living the myth that is the American dream. Successful career, a loving wife, etc. But like so many men when they hit midlife, Arthur wants more, but has no idea what that more actually is. More soon comes in the form of the company, a mysterious entity that performs rebirth surgeries on its clients. Feeling like he has nothing to lose, Arthur undergoes the procedure and is rebirthed as Tony Wilson, a younger, taller, and more handsome counterpart played by Rock Hudson. To the entire world, Arthur is no more, his death faked in a hotel fire. He's now free to reclaim a bachelor lifestyle as Tony. He moves into a beach house where he can work on his art untethered to the responsibilities of his old life. But remember, this is a sci-fi thriller, so nothing is as it seems, and sooner rather than later, things go off the rails. Like Pillow Talk, Seconds and Rock's performance in it can be contextualized with that of his real-life persona. Tony, as played by Rock, enters the film as a clean slate, with no past to bog him down. At least that's the theory. Frankenheimer thought this aspect of the character suited Rock perfectly. Quoted from Griffin's book, Frankenheimer says, quote, if you look at it, he, Rock, was kind of an invented personality, wasn't he? And Rock identified with this guy. If you destroy your past, then you're nothing. You can't function. And to become Rock Hudson, he had to destroy a great deal of his past. End quote. This destroying of Hudson's past, of course, refers to the personality makeover movie stars were all but forced into under the studio system, shedding away their old lives and names and sometimes appearances for personas that the studios molded for them. So, yes, while the parallel is definitely there, I wouldn't necessarily say it's unique to Rock. What I find most compelling about Rock's performance, something you won't really find in any of his other films, is how he's able to communicate his character's loneliness. For many scenes, Rock's completely alone on screen, often sans dialogue. He stands firmly on his own. And of course, he's gorgeous, but if he weren't such a fascinating presence apart from that, these solo scenes wouldn't work as well as they do. What's even more remarkable about Rock's performance of loneliness is how well it mirrors that of John Randolph's. Though they look nothing alike, Hudson is able to emote in ways that are eerily identical to Randolph. As Tony, he captures Randolph's unease and discomfort within his own body, his reserved pensiveness. I captured these images while watching because while I'd seen the movie before, I found myself both haunted and in awe of what Rock's able to convey, without any words at all. Near the end of the film, when Tony breaks from the new life he's been given and pays the wife he left behind a visit, he poses as a friend of Arthur's, and they talk about the man Mrs. Hamilton believes to be dead. What I remember him most for were his silences, Mrs. Hamilton tells Tony. There was a look around his eyes, like he yearned to say something. You hear her say this to Tony's face, a face so unlike her husband's and yet so similar. And having watched Rock so perfectly double Randolph's previous emoting, you're surprised she doesn't put it together right there. It's a beautiful yet haunting moment. Seconds was released in 1966, the same year as Mike Nichols' Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and 1 year before Arthur Penn's Bonnie and Clyde, the latter of which was particularly instrumental in fully dismantling the ultra-conservative studio system that had run Hollywood for decades. While Bonnie and Clyde featured new stars Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, Virginia Woolf pushed boundaries with old Hollywood royalty Elizabeth Taylor, one of Hudson's previous co-stars, and Richard Burton in the lead roles. Seconds placed a notable actor of the Golden Age into a film whose plot engaged with subversive themes that should have been perfect for its contemporary moment. So why doesn't it cast as large a cultural shadow than other new Hollywood films of the time? Perhaps Seconds was lost in unfair genre bias. A review published by Time upon the movie's release ends with this sentiment. Quote, Seconds has moments, and that's too bad, in a way. But for its soft and flabby midsection, it might have been one of the trimmest shockers of the year. End quote. The general consensus of 1966 reviews seems to be that critics wanted two things from this film. First, a familiar sci-fi film with the familiar trappings instead of what it is, a character study with sci-fi elements. And second, they wanted Hudson to go back to being a heartthrob who made you feel safe and sometimes made you laugh. It's a shame the general public couldn't look past these biases and fully embrace the movie and Rock's visceral, lived-in performance. So, what am I trying to say with this video? I guess that multiple things can be true at once. First, Rock Hudson was gay, the subtext of which, if you know to look for it, can often be found in many of his performances. Second, Hudson was an attractive white man, which, especially in the 1950s, was more than enough to make someone a Hollywood star, regardless of what else they brought to the table, good or bad. And finally, Rock was a versatile actor who, even if he felt forced to play the role of America personified for the entirety of his life and career, managed to deliver several varied and, yes, authentic performances worth revisiting today. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments which Rock Hudson films you may have seen and enjoyed. Thanks again.